My name is Pamela Hart, 34 years old. The night my daughter's fever spiked, our kitchen felt more like a battlefield than a home. The hum of the blender filled the air with a low, anxious growl, mixing with the faint hiss of steam from the kettle. I stared at the digital thermometer pressed to Hannah's forehead. 104 degrees. The red numbers glared at me like a warning flare. "I'm calling the pediatrician," I said, already reaching for my phone. "Wait," Ethan said from the counter, his hand steady on the blender lid. "Mom has an herbal mix. It always worked when I was a kid." His mother, Barbara, stood beside him, her hands clasped, eyes soft with that serene confidence people wear when they mistake tradition for science. "You panic too much, Pamela," she said. "Nature heals if you let it. You can't give a baby pills every time she gets a little warm." Hannah whimpered against my neck, her skin burning like a furnace through her onesie. Every instinct inside me screamed to act. I uncapped the Tylenol bottle, the dosage written in permanent marker by our pediatrician, by weight, by safety. Barbara's hand touched my elbow. "Let's try a compress first," she urged. "I'll make one. Don't poison the baby with chemicals." She said chemicals like she was spitting glass. From the floor, Lily, my 7-year-old, looked up from her magnetic tiles. Her wide brown eyes flickered between me, the medicine cup, and her baby sister. A tiny crease formed on her forehead, worry far too old for her age. "I'm calling anyway," I said, punching the phone screen. My voice shook less than my hands. The pediatric office voicemail was calm, detached. I pressed for the on-call nurse. When she answered, my words tumbled out. 8 months old, 104 degrees, hot, fussy, barely drinking. Her tone turned precise. "Give acetaminophen by weight now. Watch her closely. No herbal mixtures, no honey. If the fever doesn't drop within an hour or she gets more listless, go to the ER immediately." I hung up, clutching the phone like a talisman. "Acetaminophen," I said quietly, to silence my doubt. Barbara frowned. "Phone advice. In my day, mothers knew better." She slid a small bowl toward me. A pale cloth floated in brownish water. "Try this. Bark tea compress. Gentle, natural, no side effects." "Modern medicine saves lives," I said evenly, "and I'm following the doctor." I measured the Tylenol and coaxed Hannah to swallow. She grimaced, let out a hoarse cry, then sagged against me, exhausted. "Cold juice will make it worse," Barbara muttered under her breath. "Doctors always overreact." Ethan busied himself rinsing the blender. He didn't look at me. In the living room, the old clock ticked too loudly. I held Hannah's tiny body and listened to her uneven breathing, short, fast, like someone climbing stairs in the dark. When the timer beeped 45 minutes later, I rechecked her temperature, 103.6. A small drop, but her body still radiated heat. Ethan and Barbara whispered near the counter. I could hear the faint rustle of plastic bags, something pouring. Lily approached me quietly, clutching her tablet to her chest. "Mom," she whispered, "Grandma's making something for Hannah. Don't be mad." My pulse skipped. "What is she making?" "A syrup. She said it'll help more than the red medicine." "Okay," I said softly, though my chest tightened like a vice. "I'm not mad." I checked Hannah again. Her skin was dry hot, her breath shallow. The thermometer blinked, 104.2 degrees. "Forget another 30 minutes. I dialed 911. 8-month-old baby, 104 fever, gave acetaminophen by weight an hour ago. Still rising." "Stay on the line," shot the dispatcher said. "Help is on the way." Barbara's voice cut through the air. "You called 911? For a fever?" Ethan froze mid-step. I turned, meeting her glare. "We're not taking chances." "I made good bark syrup," Barbara insisted, holding up a seltzer bottle filled with thin, amber liquid. "It brings fever down gently. You're overreacting." A thin brown ring clung to the glass where the liquid had been poured. Something about it made my stomach lurch. "Put it away," I said, firm. "Now." "Pamela, she's just trying to help," Ethan murmured. I grabbed the diaper bag. "Blanket, insurance card, my wallet," I said briskly. "We're going." The siren's wail cut through the silence before anyone could reply. When the paramedics entered, the woman leading them introduced herself. Abby, badge gleaming under the kitchen light. She crouched beside Hannah, checking pulse, breath, lips. "How long since the fever started?" "This morning," I said. "Acetaminophen by weight. Then some herbal stuff." "What kind?" "Chamomile, willow bark, honey," Barbara said quickly. "All natural." Abby's head snapped up. "No honey under one, and willow bark contains salicylates, aspirin-like compounds. Not for infants." She looked at me. We're going to the ER. Bring every bottle and powder she's had. Barbara's face pinched with indignation. Kids grew up on this for generations. Ethan stood frozen between us, torn. Please, Abby said to me gently but urgently, grab the containers. I pointed to the counter. Those, everything in that bowl and bottle. Barbara pressed her lips together but didn't move. Ethan, I said, sharper now. Help her or I will. He finally gathered the items, avoiding his mother's eyes. As Abby adjusted Hannah's blanket, she paused, studying the Tylenol bottle. Was this sealed when you used it? Yes, I said. At least, I think so. I opened it earlier this week. Her tone was neutral, but her brows knit. She slipped it into a plastic evidence bag. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself all evening. Fear not of the fever, but of the house itself. As we stepped into the cold night, the siren lights painted our faces red and blue. Barbara stood in the doorway, arms crossed, muttering something I couldn't hear. Lily clutched my sleeve. Mom, she whispered, are we in trouble? I bent down, kissed her forehead, and said the only thing that felt true. No, honey. We're doing what's right. Inside the ambulance, Hannah lay small and flushed under a white blanket. Abby checked her pulse again, voice steady. You did the right thing, Mom. But as we sped towards the hospital, I caught Abby glancing at the Tylenol bottle again, her expression tightening just enough to tell me she'd noticed something I hadn't. The siren screamed above us, echoing through the night. I looked down at Hannah's tiny hand curled around my finger and whispered a prayer that sounded more like a plea. If love is a rule, why does mine break so many? The ER swallowed us whole, metal edges, plastic curtains, air that smelled like antiseptic and wet winter. A nurse clipped a pulse ox to Hannah's toe. The little red light blinked like a tiny lighthouse trying to find shore. A tech slid a thermometer under her arm. Another drew blood with a practiced murmur. I answered questions in clipped pieces. Time started, meds given, how she was feeding, diapers. Every word felt like a bead I had to thread in the exact right order so it wouldn't scatter across the floor. The attending introduced herself as Dr. Patel, voice calm, face alert. You did the correct thing by calling EMS, she said, palpating Hannah's belly, listening to her chest. Acetaminophen by weight is standard. We'll monitor fever trend and hydration, and we'll run screens in case anything else was ingested. She glanced at the clear bag with the Tylenol bottle, then at the seltzer bottle with the amber film clinging to the glass like an apology. And we'll need specifics on the home remedies. It was bark tea, Barbara said from the doorway, chin up, arms folded like a gate. Chamomile, willow bark, a touch of honey, gentle, natural, safer than panic. Dr. Patel didn't flinch. Under 12 months, honey is a hard no, risk of infant botulism. Willow bark contains salicylates, aspirin-like. Not for infants. We'll take those bottles with us and document. Barbara's nostrils thinned. In my day, children weren't raised by warning labels. In my day, Dr. Patel replied mildly, is today. We'll keep Hannah overnight for observation. A woman in a plain cardigan arrived with a clipboard that didn't look accusatory, just inevitable. I'm Ms. Kim, hospital social work. With high fevers in infants and reports of non-prescribed substances, we do a routine safety assessment. It's not punishment, it's to get a full picture. I nodded. My arms felt like scaffolding around Hannah, as if the only thing holding me upright were the tubes and wires that tethered us to sense. Lily slipped in behind Ethan, small but deliberate, tablet hugged to her chest. Mom? She whispered. Come here. I guided her to the chair beside me. Her hand was cool when it slid into mine, and some animal in me exhaled. Dr. Patel returned after a loop around the bay. Initial meds are on board. Fever is trending down, 101.8. She studied Hannah's face the way you read the sea for storms. Then she looked at me. We'll check labs for salicylates and a few other things. Did anyone besides you handle the Tylenol? My mouth opened and closed. I saw Barbara's face go perfectly still. I opened it, I said. I dosed by weight. I put the cap down to hold the dropper level. The image skittered in. Ethan rinsing something, Barbara shading the counter with her body like a sundial, the amber ring on glass. Ms. Kim shifted closer, voice low. When we have conflicting accounts, photos help. Texts, anything concrete. Lily's hand squeezed mine. Mom, she said, throat tight with courage. I took pictures. Ethan turned. Pictures of what? The kitchen, she said, eyes on me. Not him. The bottle. The dropper. Grandma said it would be helpful and that we shouldn't tell you because you get nervous. I thought, if I showed the doctor, maybe it would help Hannah faster. I felt my heart break and mend in one heartbeat. You did the right thing, I told her. You're amazing. We opened her tablet together. The photos were sharp, unblinking. The pink cap medicine cup, the seltzer bottle with its honeyed ring, a dropper suspended above the Tylenol cap, amber beads midway in their fall. Not a story. Evidence. Dr. Patel nodded once, as if a piece had clicked into a puzzle only she could see. Please send those to our secure intake. Thank you, Lily. Barbara made a sound like a scoff dragged over gravel. Snitching. Teaching children to spy on family. You're poisoning this house. Ms. Kim stepped in, tone steady as a handrail. We're not assigning malice. We're looking at outcomes. An infant was exposed to contraindicated substances. You are not a legal guardian. You cannot change prescribed care. This is my house, Barbara shot back. Tonight, it's my hospital, Dr. Patel said, level, and Hannah is my patient. Ethan looked like a boy who'd lost his place in a memorized speech. Mom, he said, plaintive now, please, let the professionals do their job. Barbara's jaw trembled. For a second, something older than anger crossed her face. A flicker of grief I hadn't seen before, like light under a door. When I was 8, she said suddenly, as if confessing to the wall, my baby brother had a rash. The doctor gave him a new antibiotic. He couldn't breathe. We lost him in a night. Her voice pulled thin. You all trust labels. I trust what God grew. It was the first time I heard the wound under the doctrine. My own anger faltered, but only enough to understand, not enough to surrender. Ms. Kim lifted her clipboard. Given tonight's findings, I recommend a temporary no-contact order between Hannah and Barbara until the investigation is complete. It can be revisited after we have results and a safety plan. Pamela, you're the primary caregiver. Do you want this? My mouth answered before my guilt could. Yes. Signing didn't feel like ink on paper. It felt like clicking a deadbolt into place inside my chest. My first door, that locked. Ethan drove Barbara to his Aunt Mary's. He came back after midnight, gray with regret. They think you started a witch hunt, he said, his voice flat from overuse. He sat at the foot of the plastic chair like a student waiting outside a principal's office. She didn't mean harm, Elle. It was a mistake. Harm doesn't need a villain to be harm, I said quietly. It just needs access. He stared at his hands. Can we not make this bigger? Let it blow over? I'm asking. We're here because I didn't let it blow over. I watched Hannah's breath even out like a tide that had finally found its shore. Safety first, then the rest. In the morning, the fever's edge dulled. Hannah took a bottle. Dr. Patel reviewed the charts and tapped the bagged bottle with a pen. We'll discharge with strict instructions. Tylenol by weight, fluids, temperature checks, pediatrician follow-up in 2 days. CPS will reach out within 24 hours. And one more thing, based on preliminary screens, I'm flagging for salicylates. We'll wait for confirmation. Ms. Kim paused at the curtain. I'll arrange the paperwork for the temporary order and send you the CPS contact. They'll likely do a home visit, ask about routines, storage, who has keys. The goal is to make sure the system supports your safety choices. At home, the light felt wrong, like furniture after a move you didn't plan. The fridge hummed too loudly. Lily stuffed crayons into a cup with militant neatness, then stopped and looked up. Are we in trouble with the police? She asked. No, I said. We told the truth. That's how we keep people safe. The doorbell rang at dusk. A calm CPS worker with a small notebook and shoes that didn't squeak walked the house with me. We opened cabinets, showed thermometers, dosing charts, where we keep the Tylenol high and the herbal teas away. She asked who had keys. I said me and Ethan, not Barbara. Lily handed over her tablet when asked, square-shouldered, brave like a flag. Thank you, the worker said. You helped your sister. After she left, exhaustion washed the color out of the room. I sat on the floor with my back to the couch, Hannah asleep on my chest, one palm spread like a starfish. When I could breathe again, I called the family law attorney, whose card I'd lifted from the pediatrician's bulletin board months ago, in a moment that now felt prophetic. She listened without interrupting, then said, crisp and kind, You are doing the right things. Boundary is a door, not a speech. Let's put your rules on paper so they live outside your head. She penciled an outline, a temporary parenting plan if necessary, medical compliance clauses, explicit grandmother, zero access pending review. "We can move fast," she said. "Safety first is a standard judges understand." Ethan let himself in just before 10. He stood in the doorway like a man practicing how to be smaller. "I took Mom to Aunt Mary's," he said. "They're calling you names in there." "They can pick any vocabulary they want," I replied. "We're picking safety." He rubbed his eyes. "I need time." "I don't have time," I said, so gently it hurt. "Hannah does not have time. The rules go on paper now." The house fell into a tired quiet. Lily drew at the table, her tongue peeking out of the corner of her mouth in concentration. After a while, she slid the paper to me. A house with a tall fence. A small sign on the gate. By invitation only. Above the roof, a jagged yellow bolt split a blue sky. "What's the lightning?" I asked. "Our sign," she said with a shy smile. "For telling the truth. It gets through." I was still looking at the drawing when my phone buzzed on the counter. Police lab, voicemail. My heart tripped. I pressed play and put it on speaker. "Ms. Hart, this is Officer Ruiz from the lab. Preliminary results indicate..." A pause, some papers shuffling. "Salicylates present in the syrup sample and..." Another sound, a muffled voice offline. "Trace contaminants in the Tylenol cap consistent with..." The line stuttered, then cut into static. The system beeped. Message deleted or incomplete. I stared at the screen as if I could will the missing words back into our kitchen. Ethan's head snapped up. "Consistent with what?" he asked. I saved the number. "We'll find out," I said, voice steady, hands shaking. I opened a note on my phone and typed what I'd heard before the static took it. "Salicylates present. Trace contaminants in cap. Consistent with..." I left the sentence hanging there, exactly the way it hung in my chest. Hannah stirred, then settled. Lily slid her drawing onto the fridge and smoothed the edges with both palms. The paper looked like a promise trying to find its shape. I looked at my daughter, my other daughter, my husband, the closed door, the law firm's number now pinned to the top of my screen, the hospital social worker's email flagged. I felt the outline of a life where rules were the hinges, not the prison. "Tomorrow," I said to the quiet room, "we make it official." The next morning began with the kind of quiet that feels staged, like the world was waiting to see what I'd do next. Hannah slept, her cheeks flushed a gentler pink now. I checked her forehead, cool enough that my panic finally loosened its grip. Lily hummed softly at the kitchen table, coloring a sunrise over her lightning bolt drawing. The phone rang just after 8. "Ms. Hart," the voice said. "This is Officer Ruiz again. I wanted to confirm. Lab results are back. The home syrup contained a high concentration of salicylates and essential oils. The Tylenol cap showed contamination. Something had been added. You did the right thing calling us." For a long moment, I couldn't answer. "Thank you," I managed. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone who hadn't slept in years. The officer continued, careful but firm. "There will be a formal report. Given the child's age, this meets the threshold for child endangerment. Expect a call from CPS and your attorney." When I hung up, the house felt both heavier and lighter at once. Ethan stood in the doorway, pale, a mug in his shaking hands. "Elle," he said. "They called me too." "And?" "They're citing Mom for child endangerment," he said flatly, "and interference with prescribed care." He looked down, eyes fixed on the coffee swirling inside his cup. "Did you really think she meant to hurt Hannah?" I met his gaze. "Intent doesn't cancel impact. She didn't mean harm, but she caused it." He sank into a chair, elbows on his knees. "She's terrified. Says the system's turning you against family." "I'm terrified too," I said, "but I'm still protecting my child." He didn't answer, just stared at the drawing on the fridge, the fence, the lightning bolt. "Lily thinks we're superheroes now," he murmured. "Maybe we are," I said softly. "We tell the truth. That's our cape." Later that day, my attorney, Ms. Vaughn, called. "The police results strengthen your case," she said. "We'll file a temporary custody order with explicit medical clauses. Ethan remains a co-parent, but Barbara has zero contact until the review hearing. Do you want to proceed?" "Yes," I said, the words solid as a door latch. "Good. And Pamela, don't apologize for protecting your child. Judges respect boundaries more than guilt." When we met at her office, she walked me through every paragraph. 50-50 custody, no unsupervised contact for Barbara, Mandatory compliance with pediatric guidelines, review in 1 year, contingent on therapy, and formal amends. The document was thick with legal phrasing, but I understood the language behind it. My family would finally exist in writing, not negotiation. That night, Ethan came over after work, wearing the same tired face, but without anger this time. "I signed," he said, placing the papers on the counter. His voice cracked. "I still can't believe any of this." "Neither can I said, "but believing doesn't change it." He nodded, eyes glistening. "She called me crying, said she thought she was helping." "I know," I whispered. "That's what makes it worse." We both stood there, silent, surrounded by the echo of everything we hadn't said. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't stop her. I think I always knew she was adding things. She called it gentle boosting. I didn't want to fight about it." My throat tightened. "You didn't pour the syrup, Ethan, but you opened the door for her to do it." He nodded. "I know." That small confession cracked something open. Not forgiveness, but truth. And truth was enough for now. Days blurred into a strange routine. Pediatric follow-up appointments, legal calls, CPS visits that felt more like quiet audits than accusations. Ms. Kim returned for one final check. "The court accepted the no-contact order," she said, smiling faintly. "You did everything right. The system worked because you spoke up early." I thought of Lily's trembling hands holding the tablet, Barbara's face when the paramedic mentioned aspirin, Ethan's voice saying, "gentle boosting." None of it felt like victory. It felt like surviving an invisible fire. When Hannah finally laughed again, full, gummy, unbothered, it was a sound so pure it made me cry. She reached for my hair, babbling nonsense that somehow sounded like faith. Lily sat beside me on the floor. "Mom," she said carefully, "do you still love Grandma?" I swallowed hard. "I love that she's part of where we come from," I said slowly. "But I love our safety more than anyone's hurt feelings. Love without rules isn't love, it's chaos." She nodded, serious. "Then I think we picked the right rules." Spring crept in quietly, longer days, softer light. I started volunteering at a food bank on weekends, handing out boxes to tired parents who thanked me like I was saving them, when really, I was saving myself. That's where I met Susan, a mother of 4 with a laugh that could disarm thunder. She told me something I wrote down in my notes later. Boundaries aren't walls against love, they're doors with locks. I kept turning that line over in my mind. Doors with locks. You can still open them, but only to the ones who knock. Weeks later, an envelope arrived in the mail, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note on thin stationery. "I am learning," it said, signed Barbara. No excuses, no demands, just 2 words that felt like a tentative bridge. I folded it, tucked it into a drawer. Not forgiveness yet, but maybe the blueprint of one. By December, life had found a quieter rhythm. Ethan and I split holidays evenly. He visited 1 hour on Christmas Eve, no Barbara. He respected that boundary without question. It was, in its way, the best gift he could give. Lily helped decorate the tree, balancing on a chair to tape her cardboard lightning bolt at the top. "It's for truth," she said proudly. "It's perfect," I whispered. That night, after the girls fell asleep, I scrolled through my old notes. The first line stared back at me. 140 GAFE, Tylenol, 911. My hand trembled slightly as I added a new one beneath it. Safety first, then the rest. Before bed, I slipped a note under Lily's pillow. "Thank you for telling the truth. That's a superpower." In the morning, she came running into the kitchen, holding it up with a grin that could melt winter. "Can I put a new drawing on the fridge?" "Of course," I said. She taped it beside the old one. This time there was no fence, just a small garden, green and open, with a wooden gate and a doorbell. On the sign, she'd written, "People who choose safety live here." I stared at it for a long time, the air thick with something tender and new. A promise, maybe, or a prayer finally answered. That evening, Hannah's forehead felt a little warm, teething again. 100.4 degrees. I measured the dose, gave her Tylenol by weight, then rocked her as the cartoon flickered on the TV. Her eyelids drooped, her tiny hand rested on my heart. Lily covered us with the blanket and whispered, "Mom, we're okay. We have a plan." And this time, we have a plan didn't mean we'll survive no matter what. It meant we live by our rules, and we don't hand them away. Some nights I still replay that siren in my head, the blue light flashing against the windows, the sound of fear turning into action. But then I remember the warmth of this room, the girls safe, the doors locked by choice, not by fear. Love isn't what we let in, it's what we protect. And tonight, that's enough.